Hey everybody, hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the word, and today that word is fit. Fit. Now we're not talking about being physically fit for the job, but we're talking about being spiritually fit or qualified or ready to do the job that is set for you. Now, as we're talking about Nehemiah, this is something that we see, and the reason that he is fit is because he is a man of prayer. And that is something you see throughout the book of Nehemiah and what we've already talked about this week with his prayer and confession of sin and looking to God to guide him in all things. The end of chapter 1, we talked about yesterday, the very last line, he mentions that he's the cupbearer. And here, right as we just move right along into chapter 2, and you'll see that he picks up in that role and he tells you exactly the scenario that's going on. So remember, he's gotten this devastating news from home, and now he is looking, he's going before the king, and he's visibly upset. And you'll see that he was afraid. And the reason he was afraid is you did not want to come into the king's presence and upset him in any way. Because, it wasn't like a discussion. They could take you out right then. And I don't mean just take you out of the room. So there in Nehemiah chapter 2, looking at the first 5 verses, and I want you to see something. It's just a short little line in here that we'll really focus in on. But it begins in verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass in the month of Nisan that in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, that I took the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had never been sad in his presence before. Therefore the king said to me, Why is your face sad, since you are not sick? This is nothing but sorrow of heart. So I became dreadfully afraid, and said to the king, May the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad, when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire? Then the king said to me, What do you request? Now, here's the little short line you would miss if you don't pay attention to it. It says, So I prayed to the God of heaven. And then it picks right up in his conversation. It says, And I said to the king, If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Now, we'll talk about that word favor tomorrow in the way that he mentions it there, and we'll see how the favor of God begins over Nehemiah. But specifically, did you catch there at the end of verse 4? It says, So I prayed to God. And one of the best things about that is that he was already prepared ahead of time. You don't see a break in the conversation where the king asks him, he says, Why are you upset? And he tells him, and he says, What do you request? And it says, So I prayed. And then he gave a response. So in that moment, it wasn't like he said, Hey, king, why don't you hold on a minute? Let me go into my prayer closet and spend some time conversing this with the Lord, and then I'll get back to you. No, what he said was this. In his mind, in his heart, Lord, this is what I've prayed for so long. Give me the words I need right now. And so what happens is all that time that he had been spending in prayer for many days before, he was praying for an opportunity. And that's the same thing you and I, we need to pray that we would be fit and ready for the opportunity to share what God has laid on our heart, to share what he would have us to do, that what his will is for our lives. And see, that's what it means when Nehemiah was fit for the task. He was fit for what God had in store for him. See, and the thing is that he knew he couldn't do it on his own. So I don't know what God may be calling you to do today, but I'm telling you, if you spend time in prayer beforehand, this is for just as much for me as it is for you, right? If we would collectively spend time in prayer, asking God to show us exactly that opportunity that he has before us, that say, God, at that moment, let me know that that's the moment you want me to share your will. And so what does Nehemiah do? When that opportunity presents itself, I believe it was one of these little short prayers inside. It says, Lord, this is it. Give me the words to say. And just that was even in response before he opened his mouth to the king. See, too often we haven't spent the time in prayer ahead of time. And so when we face that opportunity, we just say, well, I haven't prayed about it. Or we try to handle it in our own strength. And that's when we find ourselves falling flat on our faces. So today, just be reminded of this. You may be saying, well, look, I know what God is calling me to, but I'm not fit for the task. Well, the best part about it is as you've probably heard before, that God doesn't call the qualified, but he qualifies the called. Right? He doesn't call those who have it all together. He calls those who are willing to let him have it all. And that's what it means to be fit. But I guarantee you this, being fit for not just for the kingdom of God, but being fit for the work for the kingdom of God begins with us in prayer. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.